Hello guys, what is going on? SonOfChelsea back here again for another edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Hope you're doing well and keeping safe on this Tuesday. In today's episode, reacting to some more reports surrounding Frank Lampard's future. How much jeopardy is he in terms of his job at the moment? We'll get into that straight away. But also some transfer talks surrounding a defensive target that could be brought in this month in the window. But before we get into any of that good stuff, I want to ask you guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also hit the like button if you're enjoying the content because it helps out the channel as well. So yesterday's episode of Let's Talk Chelsea was focused on reacting to that massive Athletic piece on Sunday about Lampard's job being under serious threat and also looking for a potential replacement. And I gave my reaction to that. I gave my thoughts sort of on the short term versus long term problems at Chelsea and my feelings about Frank Lampard. So please go and check out that video. It'll be up in the cards. Spoke about a lot about the situation at the moment. But it's interesting, yesterday following that Athletic piece, we got reports from other top journalists surrounding Chelsea like Jacob Steinberg, Nazar Kinsella and Matt Law about his future, Lampard's future at the moment and the situation currently Chelsea find themselves in, and sort of reeling back a little bit on how serious the situation is. All of them, of course, are stating, and I'll state this as well, things need to improve drastically in the coming weeks or Lampard will likely be out of a job. But in terms of his job being under serious threat right now, both Jacob Steinberg, Nazar Kinsella, but also Matt Law as well, as we'll get into, say he's likely to be given more time. So as you can see, firstly here from Jacob Steinberg, Lampard to be given time at Chelsea despite concern over recent results. Frank Lampard is set to be given time to prove that he deserves to stay in his post as Chelsea's manager despite growing alarm behind the scenes about performances and the club's board being alerted to Thomas Tuchel's interest in the job if it becomes available. Interestingly, about Tuchel and Nagelsmann, both named in Steinberg's piece. For me, about Tuchel, he does mention about Tuchel's career and of course being at PSG, taking them to the Champions League final last season, but of course losing to Bayern Munich in August. He states that while the German has a reputation for playing attacking football, he struggled to cope with the internal politics at PSG. And I think to Mourinho, I think to Conte, I think to Sarri, will that friction be there with someone like Tuchel? That's the thing you have to consider when moving forward when I hear names be brought up once again about this 2-year cycle and my frustration with it. And things needed to change maybe within the culture of Chelsea, and they're not changing anytime soon, of even bringing in an exciting coach like Tuchel beyond Frank Lampard. Will you just have the same issue once again? And there's proof there at a big club like PSG with big ambitions like Chelsea. Tuchel struggled to cope with that and eventually left recently. Matt Law, one of the top sources surrounding Chelsea news, said similar in his piece for The Telegraph yesterday. Chelsea yet to hit panic button on Frank Lampard. Chelsea do not have a ready-made succession plan for the replacement of head coach Frank Lampard, with the club yet to hit the panic button over their poor run of form. Lampard is well aware that pressure on him is building as a result of 4 defeats in 6 games and that there are members of his large squad who are unhappy with the situation they find themselves in. But Chelsea are mindful of the fact that Man United, Man City and Arsenal have suffered difficult periods in what has been an incredibly unpredictable Premier League season, and remain hopeful that Lampard can steer the club out of their slump. So conflicting reports, and it's hard to sort of gauge how serious the situation is. I think what we can, I guess, summarize from all these pieces is there are maybe conversations going on at the top of the club surrounding Lampard's future, as we are having as fans too, and maybe due to the fact there's a conflict in terms of how serious the situation is, or where the club is going in terms of not giving Lampard time, giving Lampard more time, not hitting the panic button as Matt Law says. It maybe is a bit like the conversations we have as fans. Some people at the club maybe want Lampard out or say that they don't trust Lampard currently, or maybe there's other people who want Lampard to be given more time and do have faith in him. So it may be similar to us as fans having those conversations in terms of division, in terms of where we go moving forward, and maybe that's represented in the conflicting reports we've seen over recent days. I think Matt Law's point about it being a really unpredictable Premier League season, I think is a really valid one, and maybe the reason Lampard is given more time and patience. Because you do look at the next run of games for Chelsea, and as unlikely as it looks at the moment with our current form and problems, if Chelsea were to win 3 or 4 games in a row heading up to that Spurs match, I believe on the first weekend of February, we're going to be in a really good position once again. And that is the nature of this Premier League season, because teams are dropping points, teams like Liverpool going through difficult periods and making it really tight at the top of the Premier League. So with Man United, look at the problems they've had. I know there's comparisons, and I know this frustrates people, comparisons to Guardiola or Klopp. I actually think the comparisons to Solskjaer are probably more representative of where we are with Lampard at the moment, and probably in terms of realistic where we are in terms of a manager and being given more time and them going through difficult periods. I mean, look at Solskjaer losing 6-1 at home earlier in the season. Questions over his future even as recently as the beginning of last month when they were knocked out of the Champions League by Leipzig, and look at where they are now, potentially in a title challenge. I mentioned this yesterday, so maybe that could help Frank Lampard as well be given a little bit more time to turn things around. And also the bloated squad. This has been mentioned in several pieces surrounding the amount of players at the club who are not involved in the first team at the moment, players Chelsea don't want in the long term, couldn't get rid of last summer. And I do think this is the main priority in this Jan transfer window, to trim the fat of the squad, basically the unwanted fat of the squad. And that's harsh to say about some players, but apparently that's causing friction behind the scenes. Players not involved in the first team. The club don't have long plans. Frank Lampard doesn't want these players, and I think it isn't helping at the moment. So I think that's the key thing this window, the likes of Marcos Alonso, the likes of Fikayo Tomori on loan. But where we go from here, I do think, based on those reports yesterday, you are a little bit more optimistic that Lampard will be given the time, at least for Morecambe and Fulham. But if he loses either of those games, especially, I think obviously the Morecambe one, it's going to be a heavily rotated side, and you back Chelsea, even a rotated side at the moment, to get through that. But also the Fulham game for me is more critical in terms of Chelsea, the Premier League, Champions League football being threatened. And then if he loses that game as well, you think it really will be the end for Frank Lampard, unfortunately. But we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully the time between a Man City and Fulham game with a heavily rotated squad, likely on Sunday against Morecambe, if that game goes ahead, will hopefully refreshen things within the squad, give Lampard time to think about tactics, maybe shifting things going into that Fulham game and moving beyond that. We'll have to wait and see. Give me your opinions on these reports in the comments below. And some transfer gossip now surrounding Mohamed Simakan being linked with a move to Chelsea this window. Chelsea have reportedly made contact with Strasbourg over a possible move for the 13.5 million rated centre-back Simakan, as Frank Lampard targets a long-term replacement for Thiago Silva. Original reports came out of France last week, and apparently Chelsea are willing to loan Simakan back to Strasbourg for the rest of the campaign in a bid to win the battle for his signature. So this is kind of a surprising one to me in terms of the age of Simakan, and I'm going to reference the likes of Malang Sarr here, but also Mark Guehi, same age at Swansea, on loan at the moment, really doing well in the Championship and getting rave reviews from Swansea fans on a regular basis. It just seems like a bit of a surprising one to me when I look at Fikayo Tomori as well. Has to go out on loan this window for me in the Premier League, get some minutes for the rest of the season, because he's not getting barely any minutes for the first team at the moment. I understand the need to think beyond Thiago Silva. That absolutely needs to be a necessary thing that Chelsea need to look at, either for next summer or the summer beyond that, thinking about a long-term replacement in that area. But going in for players, I wonder if Simakan will be a Malang Sarr type signing, in a sense that Chelsea will look to buy a player, loan him back out, may never actually feature for our first team, but Chelsea make a profit from him in the end. And I think Malang Sarr for me fits into this category quite well, because if Sarr as a free agent, a little bit different, but signing him on a free last summer is a win-win situation for Chelsea, because if Sarr does really well but never is good enough to feature in the Chelsea first team, then we can sell him for a profit. Or it's another win, we bring him back and he's good enough to feature in our first team as a free player who's gone out on loan and got a lot of experience. So maybe Simakan could fit into that role. I just think with Guehi potentially being a big player for us in the future, I'd rather Chelsea invest their time on him than going out and spending money on a player like this, when potentially we've got players already at the club internally that we could fix in this area. It just seems a bit of a surprise to me. But in terms of deals this window, I am looking more defensively, I think, in terms of any signings that could come in, because I think the chances of Chelsea buying this window are very unlikely. Remember, last window we didn't buy anyone, and I think with the massive spend we had in the summer, don't expect massive signings this window. But I am making a massive transfer window video for this week on the channel, so please stay tuned, hit that notification bell so you don't miss it. Sort of how I would do the January transfer window if I was in charge in terms of buying and selling. So there are some other players other than Simakan in defensive positions Chelsea have been linked to that I think we can get into in that video. Let me know your opinions about this link. Do you know that much about Simakan? What do you think about this link? Do you think Chelsea should be investing in this window and the likes of a defender? Please let me know in the comments below. But that is it for this edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch it. If you did enjoy it, you know what to do by now. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter at SonOfChelsea. Have a great day, and as ever, I'll see you again.